Bradford Ferguson, have just told me just before we went on the air, you made news. You even made the probably the thumbnail. You said that you believe that the skeptics of the robotaxi are going to be shocked. Would that be the right word, or would you go further?
Yes, 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 absolutely. So, I've been trying out Uber driving or Uber supervising, Tesla self-driving, and it's just
I know. I come on now.
really good.
Tell us the truth. You just needed the money. You needed that $25 an hour. Come on.
It doesn't quite pay for my Model Y lease, I'll tell you that. The launch series was a little extra money, and I'm somewhat losing money on the deal, but it's the Uber revenue does help for the research. So we'll get into that in a bit, but I think there's skeptics about the Austin rollout. There's a few skeptics. I think that the system isn't going to be quite ready for June. They're just skeptical of the Tesla's ability to execute on that. And I'm here driving the car or supervising it, and it's very safe. It does a better job than I do, so it's makes better decisions than I do. I find when I'm driving myself and I have to put my energy into that, um, I make worse decisions. Sometimes I pull out when I shouldn't pull out into traffic or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's another I don't remember what the name is on X, but there's somebody else that does Uber rides. I
Mhm.
think possibly in this particular case, the person is trying to make a living doing it. And he
There's
just
yeah, there's a number. There's Kaz. There's JC Christopher, who's retired, and he's doing that. Holmar's catalog. He does the Uber driving. I think it's more to learn about it. So I think the skeptics think that safety critical disengagements are less than 10,000
oh,
miles per disengagement,
I
like
see.
worse,
Yeah,
worse
worse
than
than
that.
yeah.
Whereas I think we're worse than 1,000. I think we're better than 10,000 miles per disengagement. They're less frequent than once every 10,000 miles. And when I say safety critical, I mean you're having to slam on the brakes uh, to prevent an imminent accident.
Right, right.
So you don't want robotaxis to get in an accident.
Oh,
You also don't want them to do sudden hard braking for no reason,
right.
right? Those are probably the biggest ones that you don't want it to do. Ideally, you don't want it to break traffic laws, but Uber drivers do this all the time, and human drivers do too.
Definitely. 100%. Yeah. So, okay. So overall, these Uber drivers that are on X and you now joining the crew
Mhm.
are overall reporting pretty darn good results.
Yeah, the we'll just turn on Tesla self-driving and see, can it get us from pickup to destination, and what kind of disengagements do we have, if any?
Mhm.
And I haven't had anything that was safety critical. Um, in my area in Indianapolis, we can have some cold winters, so we have potholes.
Mm.
It's not avoiding potholes like it should, so I've disengaged a couple times around potholes. Where our bus lanes might be painted differently than they are in other areas of the country, so the car is driving in bus lanes where it's a dedicated bus lane, not like
Right,
a temporary one that's on
right,
the right.
right.
On the right, it's a dedicated one that's on the left, and you really shouldn't go in that unless you're turning left.
I see.
So beyond that, beyond those two things, like it's pretty much ready. in Indianapolis. Now there's a couple things it needs to correct, and Tesla knows about this, and I'm 99% certain they'll correct this before they unleash it in Austin. Is you don't want it to go at a red light where it's going straight, at a
No,
red light from a stop.
it's not good.
Yeah, you don't want that, and you don't want it to go on the wrong side of the road, um, unless it's like going around somebody. But you don't want it to do that either. But those two things Tesla's aware of, and I'm highly certain they'll fix that before June.
Yeah, and we've had about 5 months now, right, since the last upgrade. So you have to know that during that 5 months, Tesla was up, increasing and improving and increasing and improving what it is that they are doing, especially with the ones that are acting like robotaxis now with a supervised driver
Mhm.
up in the Bay Area. They've had these multiples. Is it 300 in Austin that are driving around Austin? Is that how many?
Yeah, did Elon say they're driving laps around Austin?
Driving
Doing
laps
laps?
around Austin. So they're getting tons of data from those.
Mhm.
I don't think Tesla would take a risk of starting on June 1st. I don't even think they would take the risk of announcing on June 1st if they weren't 100% sure that it's going to be a great launch.
Right. And the AI department, tweeting out about June 1st and saying, June 1st was 31 days away when on the 1st of May or whenever that was.
Yeah.
Um, that's very bullish and acting with confidence and certainty.
So what are your passengers telling you? What first of all, what encouraged you? What caused you to want to go out and do this service to the Tesla community? You've been, a servant all along, going out to Lathrop and reporting on
Mhm.
how many uh, 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 what do you call them? Mega
Mega
pack,
packs,
mega
we're
packs
coming
were
out
being
of
made. Yeah,
the
yeah.
Lathrop. Yeah.
And now you're going out there and doing this on the ground reporting. So what was the trigger to get you to go out and do that?
So I wanted to better understand the ridership of Uber. Who's the typical Uber rider? Because I know how I use it, but I don't represent America or anything like that. Uh, I also want to see how the car drives. So with the ridership, uh, most riders are using Uber to commute to and from work.
Hmm.
They're working class. Some may even be like close to minimum wage jobs with fast food, which is kind of shocking.
Yeah,
Where
it is.
people use it to go to Dairy Queen or Dunkin' Donuts, something like that. But it's in-home health aides where they're not nurses, but
Yeah, yeah.
they'll sit with people that need help through the day.
Yep.
Those folks, I think, may make between like 15 and 18 an hour or something like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So, for them, when they're using Uber to commute, they're typically giving up about an hour's worth of their pay per day, which is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
So the reason they're doing that is they don't have any other option. So they either don't have enough cars in their household, or maybe there's something going on with driving record, or they just they feel they can't afford another vehicle. So they use ride shares to get to and from work. And
Yeah.
this is the majority of rides. So it's not
Interesting.
on vacation. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
going out and get liquored up. Now I could give rides, at a different time of
Right.
night
Right.
and serve a different population, but it tends to be people who are commuting.
Wow. 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 That's very, very
Yeah.
interesting.
But
Uh,
then, but
oh,
so then I ask them about like the car driving itself, and all that, and we'll get into that maybe next.
Well, no, that's what I want to know. So, I mean, this is what you I mean, you wanted to know who the writer was.
Yeah,
So, but you also had some questions. You kind of like a survey, I suppose.
yeah, yeah. So my assumption going in is like Uber and Lyft, they typically start at about $2 a mile. It can vary. So longer trips you can get for less than $2 a mile. So $2 or more per mile
Mhm.
is what Uber and Lyft are doing. So I thought if Tesla goes $2 or less, and just like a little less, not like
Yeah.
all the way down to $1 a mile or something like that, but just like maybe $2 to $1.60 or something like that. I thought that these working class people are spending a lot of money on their travel, on their transportation, that they would jump for that.
Right.
Um, so I would, and maybe I need to introduce a little better, but they'll see the cars driving for them. They'll say, "Hey, the car's been driving for us this whole time. You know, how's it been driving?" And they'll say something, and then I'll be like, "So if one of these pulled up and was picking you up for an Uber ride, and it didn't have a driver in it, would you accept the ride?" And it surprised me. So I'm going to keep asking more, but
Uh-huh.
it's like an immediate nope.
Immediate no every time.
So NOPE. So there are some people who are like they're um they see the technology and they're pretty amazed by it. But I think a lot of people are a little uncomfortable. And I think I think maybe it's an age thing, but it could also be about technology adoption.
Hmm.
So I thought the whole working class thing would, and the lower cost would allow Tesla to have a much larger market initially.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it seems like it's more about like maybe age and whether you're an early adopter or not.
Right. Yes, 100%.
And I would follow up with a question. If they were like a quick no, I would
Hmm.
say, what if it was half price?
Hmm.
And still it's, they were dug into their initial answer.
Yeah.
Now, I think I can frame it a little differently. So, women, I could ask, okay, there's no male driver in the car.
Right. Yes.
But I think there's also other benefits to not having a driver. So some of the riders, I'll ask them, do you want any music on? And whatever it is they want, I'll play it. And um, I was driving someone from like a fast food joint all the way to across town to get her. She had just got her this new job, so she was getting her cell phone reactivated.
Oh, huh.
And then, so as we were going, we were listening to music that she liked and listening to it kind of loud and all that. But like most people, they wouldn't feel like they had license to do that with someone else in the car.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there's benefits people really haven't thought through about not having a driver.
Oh, I have.
Yeah.
We
You
when
have, that's for sure. You and Brian have thought about it. There's a bunch of
well
people who have.
when we took our trip last year to Philadelphia and then up uh to Canada to the Niagara Falls and then Canada, then down the coast to New York City. We decided not to spend a lot of money to try as best we could not to do rental cars and
Hmm.
to do trains and Uber instead. Now,
Hmm.
the train part of it, we were not thrilled with after the first train ride, so we kind of blew off that part of it. But we took a lot of Ubers,
Hmm.
and I mean, the experience was I mean, most of them were nice enough and they didn't do anything bad, but
Yeah.
but the experience was not positive in any regard. Whereas I expect the experience in these cars to be a good experience.
Hmm.
To set the temperature, yeah, it's all in your app. You just set it the way you want it. You set the music that you want. You're not talking to, you don't have this person, you don't have the smells, you don't have their music. I
Yeah.
was with somebody the other day where this guy actually had two two radios going at the same time. So he's listening to the sports scores and he's listening to music at the same time.
Uh-huh.
That's like anyway. So no, I think there's a massive benefit. So okay, so $2 is around what these people are paying during the commute period
Yeah, $2 or more. Yeah.
or more during the commute rush, if you will. Yeah, yesterday morning we were supposed to take an Uber to the airport. It would have been just about $2 an hour. I mean, $2 an hour, just almost
Mhm.
exactly that. 60 miles one way. So even though it was a very long trip, it was still right around $2. But it was during rush hour.
Mhm.
Um, so okay, so that's interesting that there might be some resistance now in.
Yeah, and so maybe some people they didn't want to say they would do it without a driver because I was there and they might think,
Oh, I see.
they're replacing me. And
Right,
I think I'll clarify that. So
right.
I got some more work to do. I'm going to go back to the drawing board. We'll keep the survey going. Yeah, but I want to learn about these attitudes just so we can kind of understand what the adoption curve
Yeah.
might look like, what the attitudes are like. Because I'm in Indiana, so we don't have like Waymos running around Carmel, Indiana, or anything like that.
Not yet, not yet. Okay, so then we've got the second question or the second thing that you were kind of looking at here was the rate. And you said that you did some investigation. I guess
Yeah.
Uber gave you some numbers in terms of what they found. I know that what do you call it? ARK Invest has indicated how they look at these
Hmm.
amounts of how much you charge versus how many people would be
Yeah.
willing to take the ride. So anyway, what did you find?
So let me step back. So 𝐓𝐡𝐮𝐫𝐬𝐝 has done a lot of research and just looking at what kind of coverage Chicago has from Uber, and if you replicate what they're doing, cut a little bit off the price, but make it so that there's a 2-minute wait instead of like up to 10-minute wait, that sort of thing, that effectively, like a smaller area of Chicago would be 10,000 robotaxis is what you would need to cover it
10,000. Okay.
in the urban Chicago, I believe.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So he estimates that 1 million robotaxis would need to be needed to cover the urban population of the US. And I believe this includes suburbs where
Okay.
you have a 2-minute wait time
Mhm.
and you're able to cover surges that happen with rush
Yep.
hour, that sort of thing. So so you'd be able to field 1 million cars at around $2 a mile
Okay.
and be doing less than what Uber and Lyft are typically charging, because typically shorter rides are going to cost more per
Right.
mile.
Right.
So most people aren't going 60 miles.
Right. Yes.
Um, so you can field 1 million without needing to lower the price. I
Mm.
think that's a really key thing
Mhm.
for
And
people to
Robert
get.
Scoble would say you could raise the price.
Yeah. And people do pay more for Waymo.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
um, so I think, technologists like ARK, they're thinking way into the future, into the limit, into the extreme.
Right.
Okay, what if Tesla reaches this massive scale where you could charge 60 cents a mile, and maybe your car costs you 30 cents a mile. Most people think it could be less, but and there still be really good margins for the robotaxi business, at
Mhm.
that point.
Yeah.
Um, but Uber did a study. They shared, and this was from our investor day, I believe it's 2021, where they they experimented with this in various cities where they offered rides at $1 a mile.
Oh, they did it. And they actually went out and offered the rides at $1 a mile. Okay.
Yeah. So I think they selectively did this in the app.
Hmm.
And what they found was that demand was uh 24 or 25 times as much as what they were normally charging.
25 times as much.
Yeah, the market was essentially more than 20 times bigger. So you don't need to go like below $1 for a
I
long
see.
time.
Yes. Yes. So
So
technically,
there's a
so
lot of,
technically, you're talking about 20 million vehicles to
yeah,
be just in the United States.
right. So there's a lot of gravy there, um, between, when they start out and maybe even 20 million vehicles.
Crazy. Wow. That's new. Okay. That's news for me.
Yeah,
So okay. So getting it. So Robert Scoble says you can go over like Waymo does, even maybe more than Waymo because it's even a better experience than a Waymo.
right,
But let's say that, and Elon has specifically stated he's going to be at market. But what is market? You know, what's
right.
what is market for 50% penetration or 50% market share on existing rides is a lot different than what market might be for 200% of current vehicles that are out there offering rides. If you want to go to 200%, market might be a lot less. Um, you following me?
You want to go 200% higher in
In other
price
words,
or?
right now, later tonight at 7:45, people want to watch it. Cern Basher and I will be talking, and Cern says his number that he came up with for, or not his number, somebody else's number, I think, that they came up for Austin was 3,500. Right now would be enough to cover Austin based on current usage. It was actually, I think that was a couple of years ago. I think it was as much as 5,000, but let's so we can
Yeah,
use 5,000. So right now, if Tesla was able to put out 2,500 vehicles, they would grab 50% of market share.
right.
And they might be able to do that charging more or charging the same as what
Hmm.
Lyft and Waymo are doing now. But if they were shooting for 200% market share, they might have to lower the price to $1.50 is all I'm saying. So when Elon
Yeah.
says market share, there's it kind of depends on what his goal is and what his goal might be the first week versus his goal 3 months later could be
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, I think demand will be pretty high for the 20 cars. Like people are going to be traveling to Austin to try and try the Tesla service.
Yes.
Um, in general, suburbs aren't covered as well with
Right.
Uber and Lyft. The wait time is longer, and maybe the suburb customer is kind of used to it, where they know that once they request, it could be like a 10-minute wait. But I think in order to cover all areas of a city, yeah, to do something like Austin and like have really good wait times and stuff, I'd agree it'd be around like 3,500 sounds about right. And then you have three other large areas. So like uh, an hour and a half away from Austin is San Antonio.
Right.
That's a pretty good sized city. It's over 1 million. And that's the closest larger city to Austin. So they might go to San Antonio next, maybe do a similar number of vehicles there, but then Dallas Fort Worth is much bigger. You need more people, or you need more. You
More.
do need more people, but you need more vehicles for that. And then you have Houston as well. So you be you have like this triangle of cities,
Mhm.
and then you figure out, okay, what do we need to cover Texas as a state? Do we kind of just do mainly the three cities? And then I think Tesla can take that and go to a state like Florida, where there's just a longer path in California to go from, serving people that you're not charging and maybe they're employees and having safety drivers to, running it autonomously and charging for it.
Sure.
Whereas with Florida, there's, not all these hurdles and
Less friction,
checkpoints.
less friction.
Yeah, less friction.
Okay, and as you point out, I think that the launch in Austin will be super simple, quite frankly, because it's not just the people that are going to be driving in from other cities to take the rides, but you've got a massive population there that's either employed by Tesla, friends of people that are employees, people that already own the vehicle. I mean, I think you're going to have no trouble finding riders that first few weeks. And we've been having a little discussion. I forget, maybe that was
Yeah, I'd say bare minimum Tesla engineers that work at Giga Texas are going to want to do it.
oh,
And
for sure.
maybe some of the line workers, they're less engaged and maybe they wouldn't do it and they're just not they might not even be aware they drive themselves at the end of the line to the outbound lot.
Right, right.
Um, but Tesla engineers, they're young, they're getting after it, they're
Yeah,
working crazy hours. I think they would try it.
yeah, yeah. So I'm not terribly worried
There's a
about.
tech community in Austin too. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm interrupting, but a big
yeah, no,
venture technology community in Austin. There's a bunch of tech companies that have moved from California to
yeah.
Texas. So a bunch of those workers and engineers and smarty pants, they would want to be checking it out.
The huge university towns, so
Yeah,
those
a
individuals,
lot of young people.
a lot of times they don't have a car and they're going off to the downtown because it's a party town, definitely a party town. Yeah, so I'm not terribly worried about the rollout. I think they'll get quite enough rides
Hmm.
when they start out. So this then, from a financial standpoint, when do you think Wall Street wakes up? Because Nick said the other night he thinks that the FOMO will start about 2 weeks away from May 1st. He thinks that one will start. Now, we saw the market go up today, but we saw Tesla go up today, but it's basically following the market. It was followed exactly as the market went today.
Hmm.
But in terms of the FOMO, he thinks that'll start in a couple of weeks. What is today? The 8th, 10th, 9th? Yeah, so a week or so.
Hmm.
And then he thinks it'll take us till we're uh, about 30% market share is when the street will go, oh my goodness, maybe we better jump on board. So those are his theories.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. So I think there could be a run up to the event. People will want to position themselves ahead of the event. So it could run up to June 1st and then sell off. But then if when Tesla discloses that they, greatly increase their fleet from 20 to let's say 500 or 1,000, then I think that Wall Street would be forced to begin to like really get serious about looking at it. I don't think they've been very serious about it. I think you agree with me, right?
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. And it would only take I guess like 1,500 cars or whatever to equal Waymo. So like what
Oh,
if Tesla,
nationally, that's 4 cities.
yeah, nationally.
Yeah,
So like what if Tesla gets 1,500 cars in Texas like after 3 months? Like
yeah,
Waymo's had 9 years
yeah.
and they get 1,500 after 3 months. Like that should cause people to wake up. There's these Waymo files that are taunting Tesla people on X. They're like, well, we do 250,000 rides per
Right,
week.
right, right.
And sure, you make fun of what the Waymo looks like, but Tesla, they do zero per
You're
week
right.
right
Yes.
now.
Yeah,
That's going to change.
that's
That's
gonna
going to
change.
change.
That's gonna change. And the other thing, as a marketer, I look at the future cities also. So if you go into Dallas Fort Worth, if you go into Arlington, if you go into Houston, if you go into California cities, if you go into, I don't care, Carmel, Indiana, if you go into Riverside, California, there are already thousands of people that own Teslas.
Right.
thousands of people that own Tesla stock, thousands of people that are interested in Tesla as a engineering feat or as a futuristic thing that want to be, first in line. People that already have the app because they own the car, friends of all those people that are going to be intrigued. So I think that in terms of brand reach, when they introduce it in other cities, it'll be much greater than Waymo, the Waymo brand has no reach at all right now. I mean, literally, I bet you could ask the next 100 people if they've ever even heard of Waymo. Because I've done this. I've talked to friends and I say, well, we think of this, and they're, who's Waymo? So that they don't even, the brand has no reach. And the fact that it's part of Google, I don't think helps them at all. I don't think that changes anything because Google isn't doing anything to promote it. Then
Yeah.
You got Elon on X with a 200 million plus reach to notify people that it's coming to their city.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be able to roll this thing out pretty well.
Yeah. I would tend to agree for sure. Yeah.
All right, I wanted to ask you on a completely different subject, unrelated to Tesla, because we talk about the economy here as well. I have been, let's put it this way. I am really contrarian right now with regard to where the economy is and where it's going. But I'm not 100% alone. There was another big report out today. Wall Street had a report over the weekend. I saw another report coming out today that the economy might be a lot better than people think it is. That there's no evidence at all. There's absolutely no metric right now that suggests, I mean, you can grab a metric. I saw one metric out today that more layoffs this year than usual. But guess what? The government's laying off because of Doge, which is probably a good thing. But the metrics, there's no metrics yet. Initial unemployment claims today, normal. People taking a little longer to get another job after they're laid off. Yep, that's true. But the unemployment numbers were 4.2. It's where we've been. Inflation's at 0 the last 2 months. I'm thinking things are pretty good out there. And the market seems to be saying that also as just one little nibble, just one little idea that Britain has agreed to a tariff deal today sends the market up a full point. I'm thinking that the manufacturers that are in the United States right now that have already been if I was still running my plastics manufacturing business, my phone will be ringing off the hook right now with people wanting to do business with a U.S. company. And that most of the time, the U.S. manufacturer's disadvantage compared to China, Vietnam, whoever, that the U.S. manufacturer's disadvantage is like 5 or 10%. It's not 30%. It's not 40%. It's just a few percentage points. And again, the Wall Street Journal ran quite an article talking about manufacturers that they talk to who are slammed, absolutely slammed, adding back shifts, adding back lines that have been put down. And that's already happening, not counting the companies that are coming in with these new plans to build in the United States. They've already got to be hiring planners, architects, finding a piece of property to buy, starting to build out the new piece of, if they buy a building that needs to be built out, they're already starting to do the planning for building it out. I mean, all that stuff's putting people to work. I have a real strong feeling that maybe we're going to be looking at a much stronger second quarter and maybe be in the golden age by the third quarter. And you say?
So I think one reason you brought me on your channel originally was to be a little more balanced. So I am generally an optimist, and I'm somewhat of a techno optimist as well. Um, so I hear what you're saying. Um, I think there's some strains though. So I've heard this statistics. I don't know if it's true, but allegedly a higher percentage of people are using buy now, pay later to buy their groceries, where it was something like 19% of Americans have used it in last quarter, but in the first quarter it's 25%. This was according to Fortune magazine, so maybe it's like a bad poll or something like that. Could be bad polling. But you also have the federal government beginning to collect on student debt again. I think there's some strains on the lower end consumer.
Yep.
Now, I think student debt is generally overblown.
Yes.
So like the average or the median student debt is something like $30,000. So it's not just like people who go to law school and have over 200,000 in student debt and then they figure out they don't want to be a lawyer, you know.
Right.
Like we've heard some of those
I
stories.
don't know who that would have happened to.
Oh, I didn't mean to make it personal here, Randy. But I think that that could be a little overblown, but there's some strain with the consumer. But I think one thing to consider also with the consumer is the top 10% of income earners in the US are responsible for about 70% of consumption in the
Right.
US.
Right.
And what do we see at the high end? We see the stock markets come back. So that's a good thing for the high end consumer. Um, so I think you're probably right that it's not as bad as we think. Um, I think there's still some uncertainty. So I'm guessing maybe we had a recession-like scenario in April, but I'm guessing with how the fear has subsided, um, I'm guessing that this quarter will be positive. So I'm going to get out of the recession camp for this quarter.
Yeah, I mean,
You're turning me around, Randy.
yeah, I was in that recession camp too, but I have to admit that I feel foolish to not take into as an ex-manufacturer for 30 years to not take into consideration that these companies would already getting the phone calls.
Mhm.
Because I know, we were always with the bottles, we were like always right on the edge of whether we were going to go to have them made in China or not. Because the big benefit for us was not paying the freight on something that weighed so little and cost so little. Because you pay such a big freight charge for something that only cost you, 40 cents to make, cost you 10 cents for freight. So we were always on the edge that it might be less expensive to make them in China. But it wasn't 20% difference. We weren't going to be saving 20% so that we could make up that 10% on freight. And so if the difference is only 5 or 10%, people are going to come back to the US and make it here.
Yeah, Trump's doing large manufacturers a solid. These trade deals, they're trying to get these other countries to buy like Boeing planes or whatnot,
Right. Yeah.
switch their orders from Airbus or whatnot from to Boeing.
Right. Yeah. So I think your point was well made in terms of the bottom half, the under $100,000 a year people. They've been suffering for 4 years, though. This is nothing new for them. They've been the ones that have been the big losers in this whole, especially
Yeah.
the past 3 years. They've really been hurting. So the fact that they're having to go out and use a credit card for their groceries is not a huge shock. They've already been under the gun. I see them as being the big winners when we're already seeing that their real earnings is going up again, which it did during Trump 1.0, and it's already turned around and starting to go up in Trump 2.0 as inflation goes completely down and wage increases are holding in, holding in.
Yep.
So all of that looks good. I will see. This is my theory of the week.
So because you're feeling so good about the economy, then Jay Powell is right to keep rates where they are.
No, and I did a
Okay.
I
Okay, now
just
you need to explain yourself.
okay. So I think that Jay Powell. So he has two mandates. He tells us over and over and over and over. He has two mandates. keep employment low, unemployment low, or employment high, and keep inflation low.
Hmm.
When you have two prints on inflation like the two that he just got, 2 months in a row, you get great, phenomenal, better than his 2% goal. Okay, his annual year over year is still over 2%, but his month to month is way under 2%. And he said he needed to start lowering the interest rate before it got to 2%, not
Hmm.
after it plowed through. In addition to that, he said in the meeting yesterday, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. He said in the meeting yesterday, the underlying major components of inflation are steady, right?
Hmm.
Housing, oil prices, rentals, they're all steady. They're fine. Even groceries, which are heavily dependent on oil prices. Even groceries, some of them are coming down. Vegetables and fruits coming down. They're not just disinflationary, they're deflationary in fruits and vegetables. Eggs, deflationary. So I think that he gave us the data, every data point that he needed to say, the way he would have said it would have been, I can afford to bring it down a quarter because inflation is completely in check. And then to me, he should have said, here is where I see the potential price increase for the tariffs. It might be as low as my number, 0.8% total.
Hmm.
And a lot of other people are at that 0.8, not just me. A lot of other people are around 0.8 or 1.0, or as high as the highest number I've seen, which is 2.5. He could have said, this is the range. And given that range and given where we are on the underlying base, it's only a price increase. It's not inflationary. It's just a price increase. Therefore, I think we can still cut because we're not going to be the tariffs are not going to add enough to put us back into an inflationary situation. That's what I think he could have said.
Okay. We'll see what he says next month.
So the betting is now September. I think that's true. I saw a headline. I didn't look it up that the betting had changed from June to September
Okay. As the next cut, the
as the
earliest
next cut.
cut.
As the next cut. Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yes. Well, and again, the only reason I care about the cut, maybe you have different opinions on this. The reason I care about the cut is once he cuts, it'll give the 10-year bond people a, even though it didn't work last time, theoretically it gives them more room to pay less for the 10-year or to price up the 10-year,
Hmm.
lower the yield.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm not going to do the numbers day because I just did them an hour ago or 2 hours ago. People can go watch that show if they want to, because I'm, it's Hawaii time and I slept in and I didn't do my show until, just a little.
Aloha, oi. Aloha, oi.
You didn't get out your uke. You needed your ukulele if you're going to do it right.
That's true.
All right, Bradford, any last words of wisdom? Anything that you want to tell us about? I noticed I did see what looked like a really good post on Lemonade, or are you still playing Lemonade?
Yeah, we still own a decent chunk in Lemonade. We probably own like 0.8% of the company.
The entire company, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a high conviction holding for us. They had a good earnings report, good progress with the business. Um, so we're encouraged by that. It's a steady as she goes. So it's just they keep their operating expenses flat. Um, they do spend on marketing to acquire new customers,
Sure.
so you have to put that into a different spreadsheet. So
Mhm.
that's an elective thing to do to
Sure.
spend on marketing to get new customers, but you've done this many times. So like if you could spend $1 to get $3 in profit, like how much would you do that, Randy?
Unlimited. Yeah.
Yeah.
Forever and ever. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what Lemonade's doing. There's limits to how much they can do with digital marketing, but they do it to a point and then they, pause. Um, so what happens with accounting is when you have a marketing expense, it gets expense immediately. But really for Lemonade, it's an investment
Yeah.
in a customer that they've demonstrated is very profitable for them.
Right.
So they've demonstrated this over time. They have models calculating this. So what's different is Tesla, when they build a factory, it's not suddenly expensed. It's put on their books as an asset.
Sure.
Uh, when they make inventory, that's an asset, even though that's an investment, to sell. So Lemonade should probably get that same credit, but people, it's a little complicated, so people don't quite understand it yet.
Yeah. I mean,
What?
you're building your brand.
Mhm.
You're building up a reputation for people who might not buy today, but they might buy later. So there's a lot of reasons why advertising can be looked at as an asset. But as you point out, that's certainly not how we put it on our books. Now, if you're able to ascertain the brand value, you might say that that would be something that you can put as a note that like Tesla is the number 8 or 9 brand in the world, and people have said it's worth this much, just the brand alone. But it's not something you can that you actually get to count as something on the books.
Yeah. But what Lemonade can do is they can spend let's say it's $150 to acquire a
Right,
customer that they believe is going to bring them $450
right,
above
right.
their other costs.
Mhm.
So they can measure that. So it's not
Sure.
like an ephemeral
Oh yeah.
thing.
Oh yeah.
And so th this is why we have so much confidence in Lemonade as a high conviction name for us. Um, and there was one other point I was going to make on this. Um, I'm having a Nick moment. Um, so you have, so this is different than Teladoc. So Teladoc was this telehealth company. I think they still exist, but
Yeah.
they're struggling quite a bit.
Are they okay?
They would spend money to acquire a customer, but they wouldn't actually make money on the customer.
Oh, okay. That's not good.
Like their costs to service that customer were higher than the revenue they would get from that
Right,
customer.
right, right.
So like that, you definitely want to count against them.
Of course.
It's not an investment. It's like you're burning money faster.
Well,
You're
this is
getting data, but
I mean, this is customer acquisition costs and being able to evaluate the customer acquisition versus the return on investment on that customer acquisition. I mean, not every business, but almost every business does. I did that as a manufacturer. I do it now selling my products on Amazon. And in fact, I did 8 years in a row on Amazon of having a very easy to figure. I knew almost exactly what my cost of acquisition was for every single sale, and therefore I could figure out my profits. But all of a sudden last summer, it flipped on me and I didn't catch it. And to where I ended up actually losing money last year on Amazon sales because the advertising cost compared to the number of dollars I was getting back on that advertising cost was no longer the same percentage. So,
Mhm.
I'm sure Lemonade will be well smarter about it than I was, but it can happen. You're all of a
Yeah,
sudden,
you
oh,
have to constantly track
you have to,
that.
you
Yeah,
have to track it,
absolutely.
make sure it's right. Yep. Yeah, I let it get away from me because I was letting somebody else do it. But yeah,
So I'm Bradford Ferguson with rebellionaire.com, and since we're not doing the numbers, let's hear your sign off, Randy.
my son, I'm Randy Kirk. And you know what? It's been great talking to you.